maternity hospital in the city of Mariupol.
We see pregnant women being carried from that hospital. We see children shell-shocked, unable to comprehend what happened. CIA Director Burns saying that Vladimir Putin was entering a new, far more vicious phase of this conflict. And we're seeing that on the ground. Not just the bombing of that hospital, but also the treatment of people in these cities. 400,000 people in Mariupol, 200,000 desperately need to get out. They are hunkering down in basements in the freezing cold. No food, no water, no heating, no medicines. For days now, they've been trying to get out, and the Russians have been promising them humanitarian corridors, yet they've been unable to. Fox's Benjamin Hall in Kiev. Russia claims the U.S. and Ukraine are making chemical or biological weapons. Pentagon spokesman John Kirby calls that malarkey. The White House bracing for Thursday's release of the government's report on consumer pricing. Economists predicting it will show inflation reached another 40-year high last month, and those numbers will not include the rapid gas price hikes of the last week. President Biden meeting with business leaders Wednesday to talk American innovation.
The president says his bipartisan Innovation Act can help lower costs for American families, but also has a global impact.
Monitoring and strengthening critical supply chains and expands programs that help manufacturers across the country benefit from our investments.
President Biden says working to make more products in America is still a high priority for his administration.
Fox's Gernal Scott. America is listening to Fox News.
From the Fox News Podcasts Network, the Fox News Rundown, a contrast of perspectives you won't hear anywhere else. Your daily dose of news twice a day, going far beyond the headlines, tapping into the massive reporting resources of Fox News to provide a full picture of the news of the day.
Half a day. This is Jade Uggan from Security Title, and in celebration of Tomorrow Month, here is a tip on dealing with your land. You might be thinking of giving part of your property to your child or another family member. Once you have subdivided the property and recorded the map, you will also need to record the deed transferring the title. Just drawing the map is not enough to make sure they actually own the land. Protehi y Tanonmu. When it comes to your family land, call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
Colorado's Secretary of State Jenna Griswold removed Peters as clerk after Griswold said passwords of the county's election equipment software was seen online. Peters' deputy clerk also facing charges for allegedly accessing a county workspace while suspended. The charges after Peters, a Republican, announced her intention to run for Secretary of State against Griswold, a Democrat. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
The Biden administration is restoring California's authority to set its own tailpipe pollution standards for automobiles, reversing a Trump administration policy. This will likely usher in stricter emission standards for new passenger vehicles nationwide. The first person to receive a heart transplant from a pig has died 2 months after the groundbreaking surgery. The University of Maryland Medical Center says 57-year-old David Bennett died yesterday. They didn't give the exact cause of his death, saying only his condition had deteriorated over the past several days. More baristas choosing to unionize.
Employees at 3 Buffalo area Starbucks have voted in support of unionizing, bringing the total of company-owned stores with a union to 6 out of around 9,000 nationwide. In December, workers at 2 Buffalo area stores voted to unionize, while the 3rd store voted in Mesa, Arizona last month, dealing a blow to the union-free model that has existed at the coffee giant for decades. Since the December votes, workers at more than 100 Starbucks stores in more than 25 states are waiting to cast ballots. The voting comes at a time of heightened tensions between the union and Starbucks. Hillary Barsky, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
An easily overlooked part of covering our home is what's inside of it. Over time, we buy things we don't want to lose, but don't update our contents coverage. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
We're already Pica's best radio station, but we're always looking for ways to be even better.
Announcing the point on Alexa.
In addition to our FM and HD radio feeds, our incredible app, informative website, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live can now tell Alexa
to stream The Point.
And your smart speaker will start playing whatever we're saying. News and views 24/7 with your 4-word command. Alexa, stream The Point.
$15 might not get you that far, but Chili's is bucking the trend with $15 meal deals. At Chili's, $15 gives you not one, not two, but 3-course meal deals complete with a drink, a starter, and an entree. Mix and match 3-course meals 15 ways to Sunday with soup, salad, or chips and salsa to start, and ranchero chicken tacos, honey chipotle crispers with rice, bacon ranch quesadillas, or personal fajitas for the main course. Build your own $15 meal deal at Chili's. More life and great value happen here.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It's a great way to start a radio show when the radio show is a constitutionally oriented conservative show that encourages audience participation and has an international radio listening audience. So let's get right down to business, and let's go to Zemi Ikotny. So here we are. Of course, the Post is still on strike, so the Daily News has got the field all to itself. It's kind of like watching a basketball game where one of the team, before the center jump, went back into the locker room, but the team left on the floor still can't score. That's the Daily News. Our View, Guam territory should have a presence in the Senate. After years of attempts by various local officials to get the federal government to reimburse Guam for mandated earned income tax credits payments, it finally became a reality. Now, of course, I have to stop here for a reality check. We never had to pay the earned income tax credit. We're not paying the earned income tax credit, or we didn't pay it because it was an unfunded federal mandate, that phrase that comes so easily to politicians' lips. It was not an unfunded federal mandate. The feds paid it out of the income tax revenues. We didn't have to pay it because the only tax laws from the United States that apply to Guam are the revenue laws. The earned income tax credit that applied so that it requires a cash payment out to a taxpayer in excess of his tax liability is not the generation of revenue. It's a social welfare program. The only reason that we had to pay earned income tax credit is because we have a local statute on the books. Look up Title 11, Chapter 36, I think it is, and you'll find it right there requiring that we pay it. Fortunately, I don't think the feds know that, but Michael San Nicolas was successful in getting the feds to agree that they would reimburse us, that the money that we pay, the cash out that we pay pursuant to the earned income tax credit. So every year we get an estimate, we're going to get an estimated amount to cover the EITC cash out. And we use that money to pay it out. At the end of the year, we'll balance up the books. So that's the first error here. We never really had to pay it to begin with. And I hope the feds don't find out about it, because they're going to say, you know, if you never had to pay it anyhow, why should we reimburse it? And then the second thing here is to try to get the federal government to reimburse Guam. It's not the federal government that does that. It's the United States Congress. You need an act of Congress to do this, and that's how it happened. It's so sloppy to say, well, you know, the federal government needs to do that. Wrong. Yeah. Federal government is agency after agency, millions of people, faceless bureaucrats, etc. On to the second paragraph. It may have taken a global pandemic and trillions in federal government rescue funds that went to every state and territory, but it happened. Millions in EITC reimbursements payments made to the local coffers, freeing up money for senators to appropriate for other pet projects. Can credit be claimed by any one governor? Yes, Carl Gutierrez. Because Carl Gutierrez said, this is nonsense. We're not going to do it. And his director of RevTax at the time, Joey Duenas, came out with Revenue Ruling 96-001 and said, no, we don't have to, and we ain't going to do it. Until the legislature came along with the old, well, if that's what Carl wants to do, obviously we've got to be opposed to it. And they forced him to do it by passing that law. Can our non-voting delegate claim credit for this historic occasion? That depends on how one looks at the esoteric political processes of making congressional bacon. I suspect that had St. Nicholas not been there, getting that oar in the water, we wouldn't have gotten it. I have a feeling that the member of the House of Representatives from South Dakota or North Carolina doesn't even know that we have the earned income tax cash out payment here, much less have any idea that a reimbursement should come from the federal treasury. But ensuring Guam's voice is heard in our nation's capital is no easy feat. While our island's most recent delegates have seen success in some areas, most notably in things like historic war claims legislation and ensuring Guam received its equal share in pandemic rescue funds, shortfalls remain in how Guam and the territories are represented, dude. Guam delegate Michael San Nicolas Tuesday introduced H.R. 69-41, similar to H.R. 5526 introduced in 2019, in another attempt to provide a non-voting delegate to the Senate to represent American Samoa. The Commonwealth of Northern Mariana Islands, Guam, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. While it's easy to question the necessity of a non-voting delegate in the Senate, we commend San Nicolas' efforts to keep Guam's quest for better, louder representation alive. Our people, who is this? Our people that we talk about all the time. Would that be the people of Guam? Or just the people?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Whenever it's ours.
Whenever I hear this, our people, I think this must be some exclusive group that I'm not a member of, because I never knew that when people talk about our people, they're talking about me. Our people continue on the path towards self-determination.
Oh, tomorrow.
Our people continue. Yeah. So, Guahunai, T, our people.
You can stop reading now.
Tauta, T, tauta. Yeah. Our people continue on the path towards self-determination and establishing a solid political identity as we relate to the changing world around us. Well, if you want to be independent, you're probably not going to have a delegate to the Senate. I think those two are kind of mutually exclusive. It will be in our best interest to ensure Guam and the territories have an established presence in the Senate. It's far too easy to ignore the pleas and cries of those who can't be seen or heard, the underserved parts of the population. It's time Guam and the territories team up. Yeah, you know, nothing scares members of Congress more than when all 5 of the territories gang up on them. Yeah, it's time for Guam and the territories to speak up. Speak firmly and fight for equal representation in the House and the Senate. We may not have a vote, but at the very least we deserve to be seen. Smaller steps forward are better than not moving at all. No steps at all is better than making a fool of yourself, if we want to do some comparisons. And that's all we're doing with this. We're making a fool of ourselves. I did a pretty complete analysis of it yesterday, and it is a horrible idea to start with. Now, at one time, we hired lobbyists in D.C. to represent us. That to me makes a certain amount of sense. But to go walking over to the Senate, and as I mentioned yesterday, if I had seen the name of a senator in St. Nicholas's press release, I might feel a little differently, but I don't. So this is Mike St. Nicholas, and here's how it worked. It really worked well for him. He got this picture in the paper. He got a lot of good earned media out of a single press release. He got good editorial coverage in the Daily News. So it worked really well for him. But for somebody to go waltzing up to the Senate and say, hey, you guys, I know you've been around since the get-go, but can we play a little musical chairs in here? I know you only got 100 chairs in here. Could you add 5 more for us? For us? Yeah, you know, like American Samoa. It's just a really dumb idea, and if we're lucky, it'll slide along under the radar. Nobody paying any attention to it.
How about we give you a Zoom link and call it a day?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
it's the same effect.
Exactly. But you know, there are some things that if you ask for some things, people will immediately say, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. How about we should be able to select one member of the Supreme Court of the United States? Wouldn't that be fair?
Why not? In the interest of fairness.
Yeah, in the interest of fairness. You know, 9 of them, none of them are from Guam. I know one of them has actually been here. So, Senora Sonia Sotomayor came out for one of our bar meetings, and I shook and howdied with Sonia. So one of them has been here, but you know, it's a huge government, a big ocean, and an extremely small island. And one of the things that we want to guard against as much as possible is pretentiousness. It's the height of pretentiousness to think that you come up with some silly arguments like in this editorial, and 60 folks in the Senate are going to say, yeah, you know, they're right. We should have done this a long time ago. I'll introduce a bill with 59 co-sponsors. It'll breeze through the Senate.
Well, we can't get the first sentence right. Federal government to reimburse Guam.
Yeah, exactly.
We can't get through that. But, you know, in the House of Representatives, the delegate that we send to D.C. serves on committees as well, right?
He does.
Is this the intention to serve on a Senate committee?
There's no other reason to do it. Our delegate serves on committees. He has a vote in committee. Michael St. Nicholas is vice chair of the Senate Finance Committee, which is the major leagues. He's right up there with Auntie Maxine, who is the chair. So because our delegate has a vote on committee, he has the ability to do some log rolling. You know, you back mine, I'll back yours. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. And I've heard Robert Underwood, who's been a practicing cultural race theory since 1972, I've heard him say, when asked about, well, isn't it kind of tough, Robert, when you don't have a vote? And Robert said, you know, your success depends an awful lot in the kind of relationships that you build when you're back there. So our delegate doesn't have a vote, but it doesn't mean he can't get anything done either. I think so much depends on the approach that we take. I would like to see our delegate use his seat as a perch to start getting some national media. Folks like, what's Colbert's first name? He pronounces it Colbert. Yeah. You know, get on the Sunday morning talk shows and things like that because, you know, a delegate from Guam is something of a unicorn in Washington. It's different. Everybody you know, people get used to members of Congress and senators and things like that. But, well, anyhow, let's head for the card. Let's see what we got on the card today. I might even be able to find my card. Yeah, here it is. This is what we have on the card for today. Of course, we start out with Paul Zerzan versus systemic racism. I don't think I need to spend too much time talking about systemic racism. It's just that you never, ever want to go to a fiesta and when you're walking past down the table, you don't want to be saying something like, boy, that orange rice is really good. They'll kick you out of the line just right on the spot. That rice is red. I don't care what your eyes tell you. And then we've got Public Law 3634, which is a regular feature. Civil Service Commission versus Guam Fire Department. Pete Squared versus Michael San Nicolas. I put it in the calendar as Pete Squared instead of Pete and repeat, or whatever we call them here. Then we've got anonymous versus the Attorney General. So I have an anonymous complaint, which means that it's 10 times more important than any kind of a signed complaint or grievance or anything like that.
Did they post it on TikTok?
They haven't yet, but I suspect that's going to happen. But you remember how the two papers just went wild about anonymous complaints. Yeah, so if you really want people to pay attention to it, don't put your name on it. Anonymous. And then we have Candid versus the Daily News and the Post. This is the saga of Boom Montanonia, David Lujan, Perry Mason, Jack McCoy. What was his name? The cop on Law and Order? Lenny Briscoe. Yeah, Lenny Briscoe. Yeah, Boom was our equivalent of Lenny Briscoe back in the day.
Can we have a little Matlock too?
If you so desire, yeah.
Just for comic relief.
All right. Okay, so that's the card for today. I start out with the violence done to our open government law, which since the beginning of last July, has required that the two notices that must announce every meeting of a border commission must contain the agenda of that border commission in sufficient detail to put the people who want to go to that meeting on notice as to what will be dealt with. Failure to do that makes the meeting void. All right, so I start out with Mong Mong Toto Mighty Municipal Planning. And the Municipal Planning Council seem to be the worst offenders. I wonder if there's anybody in the government that pays any attention to this stuff, like Angel Sablon is too busy writing up recommendations for sentencing hearings at the district court, right? Yeah, maybe he'll pop up in that other matter dealing with Boom Montanonia and the helicopters. Yeah, you know, that helicopter was like a brother to me. Yeah, so here's the agenda for the Mong Mong Toto Mighty Municipal Planning Council meeting for March 16. Number 1, call to order. Number 2, approval of minutes for February 16. 3, treasurer's report. 4, new business. Under new business A, TG Engineers zone change application. Okay. B, Easter activities. Who's going to hide the eggs? Where they're going to hire them? Who's going to dye the eggs? Will there be a special prize for the kid that finds the golden egg? Easter activities. C, Manamko month activities. Okay, that's item C. So far, so good. Item 5, old business. How does that sound effect go, Jose? Old business. Wrong.
Wrong.
Yeah, let's try it again. Item 5, old business.
Wrong.
There you go. Yeah, it's wrong. And of course, if they are going to act on TG Engineers zone change application, whatever action they take is void because they screwed up their agenda. Will people ever start paying attention to the law? Members of boards and commissions, you'd think that a member of a board and commission would know the open government law as well as any lawyer on the island. And you'd think that the executive director of that commission or board would make sure that that was the case. Hasn't happened. Okay, then we have the Civil Service Commission. Now, the Civil Service Commission didn't really make any mistakes, but I wonder if they're carrying on some activity that I don't know about. They're having a meeting on Thursday, March 17, and under general business, 3, administrative matters, A is training, and it says training Civil Service Commission board members. So I know there's a commission that has 7 people on it. Is there a board up there too? Do they also have a board? I never heard of such a thing. Training Civil Service Commission board members. So maybe I'll send them a sunshine asking for all papers that created that board. And I don't think there is any board at the Civil Service Commission. There's a commission. And then the next item, item B, discussion on board appointment of Francisco T. Guerrero. So apparently Francisco is going to be appointed to that board. Maybe he wanted to be on the commission, but they didn't have any vacancies, so they created a board, then put him on the board just so he wouldn't feel bad. What do you think, Jose?
Come again? Sorry, I had that phone in my ear.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Took me a while to get out.
Yeah, all right. Okay, well, let me see who is capturing your ear there. Don't tell me my stack is not working today. It's not. Oh, yeah, wait a minute. Another Joe. Ethics and open government. So soon? All right. Tell me about ethics and open government, another Joe.
Okay, so this time I'm on point on the subject, right?
Okay.
All right, so yeah, I was watching or listening to an interview in a program which I will not name, and they were interviewing a gentleman who was recently hired. What's the title, director, or whatever, for dealing with ethics. I think he was formerly a professor at UOG teaching ethics, and so he was saying that government employees are required to take ethics training. So somewhere along the lines, you would think that these boards, government Guam boards, the members would be required to have some ethics training.
They do. There is that requirement for a long time. Yeah.
So they should know about this open government law. Or am I off subject?
Well, you know, knowing what the law is and ethics are not coterminous undertaking. Ethics would get you into knowing what the law is and deliberately not complying with it, or deliberately not knowing what the law is so that you can't comply with it. Those are the things that get you into ethics.
Well, I'm hoping you get to someone points out, hey, they should be aware, and they should be made to acknowledge that they're aware of the law, and they should.
Good point.
Good
point.
You're saying, right? They keep messing up the
notices.
the agenda.
Yeah.
The notices. Okay, Bob. Thanks. I just keep listening.
Okay, good talking to you, Another Joe.
You know, Another Joe is right. Somebody should be continuing to point this out.
Exactly. Yeah. Who would that be?
I don't know. That's a good call.
Yeah. All right, so on to the next item on the agenda. We've got, let's take a short break here.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point. Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Attention tailgaters. It's time for you to get a new tail to gate on. It's a fact. They got a 2021 model clearance going on all kinds of your favorite Nissan models, the Rogue Sport, Kicks, Murano, Titan, and they've all got great FM radios so that you can pick up tall tales in the afternoon. 0% APR, or your first 3 payments are on Nissan. Zero down magic tailgaters. Learn more by visiting NissanGuam.com.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Okay, so here we go. I was going to get into Civil Service Commission versus the Guam Fire Department, but I got a caller here, Donna Mila, who is a regular tailgater who wants to talk about programming Salapi. Okay, go ahead, Donna Mila.
Hi. I just wanted to bring up this issue. So they have this program, Salapi, so you're supposed to get $300 for 3 months, right? Already it's a ridiculous price because the cost of putting money in your car is almost $100 a week. So I was going through the application and it says you need an employment verification. And I'm like, who's working? As if the people who don't have jobs because of the health measures, issues, don't need the money. How are we supposed to get around to buy even groceries and things like that if we're not going to be included because you don't make this, you're not even employed? They want 2 pay stubs, and then they want an employee verification. Who's gonna write down that employment verification? It's like this whole administration is totally disconnected with all the things they've done to make sure we can't earn money, and yet they're trying to throw these $300 to us as if, oh yeah, we're doing you a favor. Money that I don't even know how they calculate. Who does the governor not fill up her own gas tank? Does she not know how much it costs to put money in a Corolla? Gosh, I'm sorry, I just had to say this. This is ridiculous. And then they say, oh, you have to make pay less than. Who makes more than $44,000 a year? A single person right now here on Guam.
Well, Donna, you can feel free to call up and criticize the governor anytime you want to. Although it's primarily my job, I can always use a little help. But the as far as I can see, this program in Salapi is not about providing a tailored response to all of the harm that the governor did with her lockdowns. It's about giving money away in such a manner that she gets good press out of it, good earned media, and if that works, then the rest of it is kind of inconsequential. I'm kind of cynical on this. I suspect you are too.
Thank you for letting me say this. Now I can go back to trying to figure out how I'm going to do that.
Okay, nice
Thank
talking
you.
to you, Donna Mila.
All right. Have a good day.
All right. Okay, so back to Civil Service Commission versus the fire department. And this, I don't know if this involves the board or just the commission, but we'll see when I get into the article. GFD objects to commission findings on voluntary demotion for lower pay. The Guam Fire Department's management objects to a recent Civil Service Commission decision on the post-audit investigation involving 3 firefighters. Now, I stop there. Can you ever have an audit of something before it happens? Is there such a thing as a pre-audit? So to talk in terms of post-audit, this doesn't, once again,
No crystal balls.
The first sentence doesn't make any sense. Commission staff reported in February that GFT violated personnel rules on compensation for voluntary demotion when the 3 employees were made to resign from other government positions to get hired at a starter pay rate when they entered GFT about a decade ago. About a decade. So this is something that's 10 years old. And then we start out, commission staff. Now, who would that be? I'd like to see names, faces, whatever, but it's the faceless bureaucracy. And picking up a 10-year-old case and then saying, well, the fire department made a mistake 10 years ago. Going on, commissioners voted to provisionally void the personal actions of the employees. GFD was given 10 days to respond. The people that made the complaints took 10 years to make their complaint. Fire department's got 10 days to respond.
Sounds fair.
It does. Assistant Attorney General Matthew Wolf, counsel for the fire department, cited lack of jurisdiction, denial of due process, untimeliness, omissions and insufficiencies in the investigation report, and open government law violations among reasons that the post-audit should be dismissed. He also stated the commission vote was unclear as to which personnel action was being held null and void. Another one of my pet peeves. Something can be null, something can be, but at the Civil Service Commission, they talk about, we'll null and void it.
Poor thing.
Yeah. During the commission hearing in February, Wolf attempted to get commissioners to discuss a previously filed dismissal motion and raised open government law issues, but was unsuccessful. At the onset of the hearing, CSC Chairman Juan Calvo instructed the parties that the hearing would be for staff. Now this just stinks. You know, you've got a lawyer there who represents a government agency appearing before a tribunal, and the lawyer has to go up against the staff of the tribunal who are nameless, faceless bureaucrats and would be strictly only on their presentation. So we came to listen to the staff, and that's all. Wolf was asked to leave as he attempted to speak during the hearing. Well, we don't want these lawyers coming up and speaking at hearings. In his objection, Wolf argued that the COC holds no jurisdiction over this case and that jurisdiction matters needed to be first addressed by the commission. Well, that's pretty basic. You know, one of the real basics of any tribunal is if it doesn't have jurisdiction, that's the end of the case. Moreover, by allowing the refiling of a dismissed post-audit request, the Commission had opened the floodgates to an unlimited number of refiling by management and non-parties. So, especially non-parties. So we'll just keep refiling until we get the right answer. The post-audit was based on a refiling of the request in late September 2021. The initial filing had run through the statutory 180-day deadline, with the CSC not able to complete the post-audit process beforehand. Staff let both the board and the commission down here. The CSC submitted a memorandum stating that the deadline would expire in early August 2021, and the agency would not meet the deadline and comply with the requirements of the open government law at the same time. You got to give that 1 week's notice. However, the memo also stated that nothing prevented the 3 employees from filing their complaint again. If at first you don't succeed, no sense making a fool out of the commission, or something like that. Nothing in the statute limits the filing of a post-audit complaint to the employee only. Management won the first post-audit, 180-day violation, and if the employee wins this refile post-audit, per the report and letter, nothing stops management from refiling the post-audit to get its turn at the second bite of the apple until infinity, Wolf stated. Second bite of, you got to make your choice there, Wolf. Second bite of the apple or all the way to infinity. I think it probably is the latter.
That's a big apple.
Yeah. The 10-year gap between the resignation and hiring of the employees and their post-audit petition also went unexplained in the investigation report, he added. Precedent from the Supreme Court asserts that timeliness matters, according to Wolf. The Assistant Attorney General also revived the open government issues he attempted to bring up during the post-audit hearing. After the investigation report was verbally communicated by staff to commissioners, CSC Administrative Law Judge Eric Miller whispered into the ear.
That seems like none of our business.
Yeah, this is not, go away, you guys. This is none of your business. Of Chairman Juan Calvo before the commission took an immediate 5-minute break. What is this? Whispering. Well, you know, I got to be careful here, you know. We may be dealing with non-binary people. How do we know what the whisper was all about?
Excuse me, it's ma'am. It is ma'am.
This is a potential powder keg here. Yeah, CSC Administrative Law Judge Eric Miller whispered into the ear of CSC Chairman Juan Calvo before the commission took an immediate 5-minute break, Wolf wrote. Probably took a break to go hide somewhere and discuss the matter, which they aren't supposed to do.
Can I take a head break?
Yeah. Management Council asked the CSC to state on record what was discussed behind closed doors and what was whispered in the chairman's ear right before the recess, and explained that failure to do so to divulge violates the open government law and will result in a nullification of the entire hearing. However, management's counsel was scolded for speaking. The request was refused because discussion was discussed in secret through whispering and during recess without notice of an executive session and related requirements. The post-audit hearing in February is a violation of the open government law and consequently void, Wolf stated, adding that there is no attorney-client exception or general privilege that applies to this scenario. God. You know, you would think that you'd have to go all the way down to Aussie to see kangaroos hopping around. Not necessarily so. Just go up to the Civil Service Commission, which we got the commission, the board, and the kangaroo court. Gosh. So, you know, the way, if there is a problem with the way a government agency is doing its personnel matters, then the proper format for that to come before the commission ought to be a grievance, so that the grievance makes his case and the agency makes his case. But as it is, it's the agency against the commission. And from this article, it's not too hard to see where the commission comes down on this. Now, I'm going to go into a little historical, little autobiographical here. In Public Law 2868, which was the annual budget, this whole post-audit thing was canceled. It was repealed. And if you want to blame somebody, blame me, because I was the architect of that. I think it was 2 legislatures later, Judy Guthertz put it back in. And it is a dumb law. It reaches horrible results. This is the one where the guy who was not qualified for the job, remember that one? He wasn't qualified for, yeah. And then he went to the Civil Service Commission, and even though he wasn't qualified, he was reinstated with back pay.
That's an odd career choice.
Really. And that's what happens when you have something like this. So, you know, you've given tremendous power to the staff. You've put the agency in a terrible position. Obviously, you got a chairman here who took for his text, you know, as to how to be a chairman. He got Chairman Mao's little red book, and that's his way he conducts these meetings. This is awful. Whispering in counsel, whispering in his ear, and then they hightail out of the room for 5 minutes and then come back and decide whether.
He did his best worm tongue.
Exactly. All right. I'm not going to let this go. I'm going to keep following this. I hope that the whole wolf pack takes after that guy. All right. Next we have, let's see. We have Pete Squared, or Pete and Repeat. Let's take a short break, and we'll come back to Pete and Repeat versus Michael San Nicolas.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Half a day, this is Governor Lou Leon Guerrero. The Biden administration is sending another round of 4 free COVID-19 test kits for everyone in the U.S., including Guam. This means getting tested for the virus can be done from the comfort of your own home. To order your free test kits, visit covidtest.gov. Do your part to stop the spread.
This ad is paid for with government funds by the Office of the Government of Guam.
Okay, here we go. I got 10 more minutes to the big halftime show here, and I've got Pete and Repeat versus Michael San Nicolas. I guess they're double teaming him. New ethics complaint made against San Nicolas. A local resident has written to the Office of Congressional Ethics alleging paid advertisements taken out by Delegate Michael San Nicolas' office were illegal. Peter John Santos released his letter to local media Tuesday. taking issue with the recent messages that highlighted the benefit of federal pandemic funds used by local businesses to deal with the economic downturn caused by Wuhan virus. Now, of course, Peter John Santos, better known as Repeat, is a tailgater. So we are naturally pro-tailgaters here on the show. One ad included in his complaint used a quotation from Jeff Pleadwell, a restaurant owner and pirate, who said, quote, "What really saved my business is the Small Business Administration and the PPP program. I felt keeping the employees was so important because I had faith that my government would help me later. The federal government. Thank you for the federal funds." Okay, so I've heard that ad. I guess probably everybody's heard that ad, right? Santos argues the print ads, along with those broadcast on local TV stations, amount to Guam's delegate using official funds for electoral purposes. The advertisement explicitly thanks someone for the federal funds, and at the end of the advertisement, it states that it was paid for with official funds. I'll try to sound just like it. Paid for with official funds of the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas. He wrote in his complaint, "This strongly suggests and implies that the funds were secured by Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas. This is an overt and blatant re-election advertisement not in the spirit with authorization by the federal government to run public service announcements for Wuhan virus-related assistance."
Wait, what?
Well, let's just parse here a little bit. An overt well, the fact that it's overt, of course.
It wasn't covert.
Yeah, advertisements tend to be that way. Even the ones that you would approve of, Repeat, are going to be overt. I don't think a covert advertisement will get you very far. And then a blatant re-election advertisement, not in spirit with our authorization by the federal government to run public service announcements. Yeah, okay, let's go on here. Santos also contends that the ads violate congressional rules about members' so-called franking privileges. Now, I would expect a call from an expert on this subject before I finish this show today. You know who I'm talking about, don't you? Our Frank. Santos also contends that the ads violate congressional rules about members' so-called franking privileges, a mechanism that allows delegates and senators to send mail without paying postage. And I used to do that myself. You know, you put the return address on the envelope, and then the addressee's name and address on the envelope. But you reverse the two. You put your name, and then up in the return address, you put the name of the guy who, put it in the mail. You save a lot of money on stamps that way. The rule was expanded to cover all solicited mass communications like advertisements, mailings, and automated phone calls, what we used to call robocalls, requiring members receive an advisory opinion from a commission that determines its legitimacy according to a report from the Congressional Research Service. Well, did San Nicolas ask for that advisory opinion? Who knows? San Nicolas did not respond to messages seeking his comment on the matter. The privilege has been a source of objection in the past. During the 19th century, the privilege, here's a quote, the privilege was commonly attacked as financially wasteful and subject to widespread abuse through its use for other than official business, the report stated. Although concerns about cost and abuse continued in the 20th century, strong criticism of the franking privilege developed regarding the use of the franc. Boy, I'll bet you our frank's ears are burning. As an influence in congressional elections and the perceived advantage it gives incumbent members running for re-election. Santos is requesting that an investigation be conducted into whether San Nicolas used official funds for campaign and political purposes, and that disciplinary action be imposed for the improper use of official resources. It may not be clear to Santos or the public how the allegation will be handled. According to a section of the OCE website where public submissions are made, communication following a complaint is expected to be limited. The OCE will accept and review information regarding allegations within its jurisdiction. The commission posted, please note that a submission of information does not automatically result in an investigation. The decision to begin an investigation lies solely with the OCE Board, Office of Congressional Ethics Board. Further, the OCE is not able to provide information about whether the board has authorized a review or whether the OCE has conducted an investigation related to the information you submit. I wonder if they use the same playbook as the Civil Service Commission uses. I wonder if counsel probably whispers into the ear of the chairman of the OCE, and that's how they make their decisions. You know, I'm going to have to dig this up when I get home. There was a really interesting Western starring Alan Ladd. You ever see any Alan Ladd movies? Shane. Come back, Shane.
He was in Shane?
He was Shane.
Hey, I'm thinking Alan Alda. Yeah, Alan Ladd, you're right. I know. Was he MASH?
Alan
It's not a Western.
No. Yeah, so Alan Ladd was a pretty good cowboy actor back in the day. And and I'm going to have to look this up because one of the movies, you know, back in the day, you know, the theater changed the movies 3 times a week. Sunday, Monday would be for adults. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, hard to say. Friday and Saturday was cowboy movies for the kids.
Matinees.
Well, not in small towns. Cowboy movies for the kids. So I probably saw every cowboy movie that was made between 1940 and 1955 or so. And one of the ones that I remember starred Alan Ladd, and the name of it was Whispering Smith. Now I've got to dig that up. Maybe there's a limerick hidden in there somewhere. Whispering Smith. Yeah, so it appears, and of course, you got to remember what you're dealing with here now. You're dealing with the ethics of members of the House of Representatives. And you can't put someone who is not a member of that body in charge of ethics. It has to be the members themselves. But when it's members, there are different kinds of personal and political relationships. You recall that Madeline Bordallo got sapped with a couple pretty heavy-duty ones. As an example, having a landlord-tenant relationship with the general counsel of a foreign country. You wouldn't think that that would be appropriate for a member of the House. All right, let's break for the big halftime show, and I'll repeat Pete's complaint here.
Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
They'll try talking. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. As the Russian invasion of Ukraine enters its third week, the foreign ministers of Ukraine and Russia will meet in a few hours in Turkey, the highest level talks so far.
There has been a modicum of movement on both sides. President Zelensky is hinting now that he won't necessarily push for NATO membership for Ukraine. And the Russians, on the other hand, are hinting that they might be willing to settle for that constitutional change, enshrining that in the Ukrainian constitution that they won't join NATO. And if Ukraine is willing to hand over the separatist areas that Russia already controls. Those are big issues, but there has been the slightest movement. That could be a hopeful sign.
Fox's Jonathan Hunt in Lviv, Ukraine. But the talks come just a day after a Russian airstrike on a maternity hospital in Mariupol injured 17 people, including some women close to delivery.
Vladimir Putin has taken off the gloves. The UN says that 18 hospitals have now been hit in this country, and it does seem a concerted effort to target the people, to break the will of the people before the ground troops go in.
Fox's Benjamin Hall in Kiev. Russia has accused Ukraine and the U.S. of making chemical weapons, the Pentagon vehemently denying it. The House of Representatives has passed the $1.5 trillion government spending bill. It includes nearly $14 billion in aid to Ukraine. It still requires Senate approval. That could come on Friday. The Commerce Department will release its report on February's consumer spending in a few hours. It's likely to show inflation set another 40-year high last month, with higher energy prices leading the way. Crude oil prices easing a bit on Wednesday, now trading near $110 a barrel. But gasoline pump prices are still likely to rise, the analysts say, because of the ban on Russian oil imports. America is listening to Fox News.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tuman location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
An easily overlooked part of covering our home is what's inside of it. Over time, we buy things we don't want to lose, but don't update our contents coverage. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Fox News confirms suspected Russian cyber attacks are targeting American energy.
Fox News can exclusively report 21 American companies involved with liquefied natural gas production, including Chevron and Cheniere, were attacked by cyber hackers 2 weeks before Putin invaded Ukraine. Hackers infiltrated the computers of current and former employees of these 21 companies. The U.S. intelligence community believes the threat from Russian hackers is increasing and that a Russian multi-phase plan to destabilize the U.S. energy industry is now underway. It's a threat the State Department has warned of for weeks. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency is working to confirm these specific attacks emanated from Russia, but the intelligence community believes they did.
Fox's Jillian Turner. People who lost loved ones or years of their own lives to opioid addiction will get their first and possibly only chance to confront members of the Sackler family who own OxyContin maker Purdue Pharma at a hearing Thursday in U.S. bankruptcy court. The judge signaling he is inclined to accept the mediated settlement, in which the Sacklers will pay about $6 billion to help communities recover from the opioid crisis. They'll also be shielded from liability from any civil lawsuits. The family insists they've never acted illegally, but prosecutors have claimed Purdue Pharma's marketing techniques helped to fuel the opioid crisis. Lawmakers in Idaho considering new abortion restrictions.
Under this measure, abortions would be banned after cardiac activity is detected in an embryo. That's about 6 weeks into pregnancy. The measure, which is modeled after a law in Texas, would allow extended family members of the patient to sue a doctor who performs the procedure. The law has exceptions for rape, incest, and medical emergencies. Opponents of the proposed legislation call it unconstitutional. They also say most women don't even know they're pregnant at 6 weeks. John Saucier, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
We're already Pika's best radio station, but we're always looking for ways to be even better. Announcing the point on Alexa. In addition to our FM and HD radio feeds, our incredible app, informative website, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live, you can now tell Alexa to stream the point. And your smart speaker will start playing whatever we're saying. News and views 24/7 with your 4-word command. Alexa, stream the point.
Half a day. This is Jade Uggan from Security Title, and in celebration of Tomorrow Month, here is a tip on dealing with your land. You might be thinking of giving part of your property to your child or another family member. Once you have subdivided the property and recorded the map, you will also need to record the deed transferring the title. Just drawing the map is not enough to make sure they actually own the land. Protehi I Tanonmu. When it comes to your family land, call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
Okay, here we are. Church. Excuse me. I have a frog in my throat. Yeah, so here we are at big halftime show, the greatest halftime show in the Western Pacific. It gets better every day. And we're going to go right back to Pete, Repeat, and Michael San Nicolas. And Michael San Nicolas, according to Pete, Michael San Nicolas has violated some of the rules and ethics of the House of Representatives, and Pete has filed a complaint with the House Ethics Committee and wants an investigation, and he wants Nicholas to be punished. And the gravamen of Pete's complaint is that San Nicolas is using his franking privilege, that is, he's using government funds, public funds, to engage in what Pete characterizes as political advertisements. And we've all heard that one where I think it's from Mark Baldiga and Sandcastle, you know, where he thanks, there's a thank you to the federal government, not to Michael San Nicolas. And then there's some people cheering, and there's a screech at the end of it. And then we've all heard the pirate, Jeff Pleadwell. You know, I was kind of glad that ad from Jeff Pleadwell ran where he said he wanted to thank the federal government and all the rest of that stuff. It's the first time I've ever heard Jeff the Pirate Pleadwell say anything other than, "Arr." Jeff's Pirates Cove, a great place. One of my favorite places. So, and San Nicolas said, Peter Santos says this is using government funds, public funds, for campaign purposes. And I can see I can see where he's coming from there. I think there's probably an argument to that effect. But before the break, I stopped and examined some of the practicalities here, and that is that the House Ethics Committee is made up of members of the House of Representatives. And that's the way it has to be. And probably going to be very difficult to get some members of the House to punish another member of the House, even when the other member is a delegate. So I think that in order for you to get the Health Ethics Committee to really come down hard on somebody, you got to have something pretty substantial. It must have been 40-some years ago when the congressman who was in charge of the bank that the House of Representatives was in charge of got crossways with the committee, and they punished him very seriously. Yeah. But it takes a lot. It can't be a close case. Is this a close case? Well, yeah, I think it is. Politicians thrive on good publicity. I mean, that hardly needs to be explained. Politicians are always in search of what's called earned media. Now, let me explain that term if you're not familiar with it. When you put an ad in a newspaper, like, I don't have an ad here. If you put an ad in the newspaper, yeah, I do have an ad right here. Yeah, there we go. I have an ad right here for KFC, right? That is paid media. Mr. KFC paid for this ad by the column inch. So you take your rule and you figure out how many inches are in that newspaper column and what the rate for a column inch in that paper is at that time. And then there's one other factor that it's involved. It's called positioning. And back in the time when I used to pay attention to this stuff, page 11 or earlier in the paper was more expensive than after page 11. So that's what's called paid media. Earned media means that you do something that causes the newspaper to put your name and whatever it is that you did or are doing in the paper. And you use the same gauge. You measure the column inches, the positioning, et cetera, and say, this earned media is worth, and you can attach a dollar figure to it. So politicians are always in search of earned media, some more blatantly than others. So what St. Nicholas has done here is inadvertently perhaps got some earned media because Pete now is putting his name in the paper. Not in a very favorable context, but in the newspaper anyhow. And the test then is to determine whether what the public money was used for crosses that line. And going back again to earned media, politicians always want to be associated with good news, happy feelings, etc. Politicians like to kiss babies. I tell you, if someone will permit you to kiss their baby, they'll love you for the rest of their lives. They'll vote for you every time. And of course, COVID has put a whole new dimension on this. So when good things happen, the politicians are going to want to associate themselves with it. Every politician will do that. If St. Nicholas has crossed the line, boy, the governor has probably crossed the line a dozen times because she's always trumpeting all of the wonderful things that she has done. I'll give you the classic example. We are going to give $10,000 to every person, every survivor of anyone who dies from Wuhan virus. You know, and when someone dies, it's just too much for a lot of people to bear. It's a sad thing. Their finances are stretched, on and on and on she goes, and she says, so we're going to provide a $10,000 payment. And then she says, it's the least I can do. Well, that clearly crosses the line. It's the least I can do with your money, is what she's saying. So I think you can make an argument that a lot of what she did crosses the line. A lot of what San Nicolas did crosses the line. How much time and energy do we want to spend getting wrapped up around those axles? And in the final analysis, who does it help and who does it hurt? Then there's another dimension here to Pete's complaint against San Nicolas, and that is that, was it 2 weeks ago? Pete got some earned media himself. He did something really, really dramatic. He went to the election commission and picked up a packet. Yeah, so he got some earned media for that, and then he was interviewed, and I think he even spent some time on Tall Tales talking about it. So he got some earned media out of that. Nothing wrong with it. So then you come to the question of animus. Is Pete really concerned about ethics at the House of Representatives? Or is he serious about running against San Nicolas and figures that the weaker San Nicolas, the stronger Pete Santos? And this is kind of like a means of weakening San Nicolas to make Pete's campaign a little bit more, a better chance of success. There's a lot to take apart here. And I'm not going to rule on this. I'm going to let it play out for a while and see where it goes. I will make a prediction. And of course, you know, predictions are always really hard, like Yogi Berra says, especially when they're about the future. But my prediction is that the House of Representatives is not going to do anything with this, just like they didn't do anything with Madeline Bradalio's case. And they haven't done anything with San Nicolas's earlier case, except bounce it along. And then, there was a little media presentation for the anti-San Nicolasites when somehow a paper attached to a leave chit became front page news in the Daily News. So much for Pete Santos, a very good tailgater, and somebody I may ask to comment on another item on the card when we get there. Next item on the card is, this is the item, Anonymous versus the Attorney General. Anonymous. And you know that any anonymous complaint is far more important than a signed complaint. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah. All right, I have it right here. So the anonymous complainant says the island deserves how the prosecution is struggling and crime cannot properly be prosecuted. They got thousands of cases and only 9 prosecutors. They, that is the criminals, get away because they know there's not enough prosecutors to take the cases to trial and win. There is simply too much work to deal with for 9 people, so they will get away with crime. But even if we get a new one, meaning a new attorney general, the problem is the system. It's difficult to hire attorneys who want to do this job because it pays so little. And the only ones who sign up are fresh graduates from the mainland who end up leaving after the 5 years is up. Explanation here. You have to be a member of the Guam Bar in order to practice law in Guam. In order to be a member of the Guam Bar, you got to pony up I think like $500 filing fee. You're subject to a character investigation, and you have to take a bar exam, a test. And it's not an easy test. Not everybody passes it. But we do have a special provision for government attorneys. And that is if you are a government attorney admitted in the bar anywhere else, then you can come to Guam and you can work for the government, but only for 5 years. At the end of 5 years, you either take the bar or you can't practice here anymore. So given that, we could entertain Saul Goodman here for 5 years. Maybe that's the answer here. Better call Saul. So that's what the anonymous writer says, end up leaving after the 5 years is up. Adding to the complication is that defense attorneys always call our bluff and ask for trial because they know we don't have enough prosecutors. As a result, we either have to let them plead to a lot less and have no jail, or we go to trial and lose, and the criminal gets away scot-free. Not a very good situation. Doesn't warm your heart, does it?
Not at all.
So, any lawyer would tell you that this is kind of the way it works, that prosecutors will take cases to trial when they think they can win, and the weaker cases are the ones that get plea bargained down. Unless you got 9 lawyers and you got 39 cases, all of which are up against the speedy trial time frame. And then, as the anonymous writer says, you either plead them down, plead first-degree murder down to illegal parking or something like that, or you take it to trial and you lose, and then the criminal gets away. The anonymous writer says, and then even if we win at trial, the judges will refuse to put them in jail no matter how hard we ask. So all this is to say, the problem exists because every single stakeholder is at fault. But if we start by paying prosecutors what they're worth, we can build a better office and fight crime harder. Comes down to money. I wonder how much it cost us to file that declaratory judgment to provide Governor Leon Guerrero political cover for her son-in-law. I wonder how much that cost. And I wonder if it costs us anything to join all of these stateside civil actions or class actions. We need to raise the pay for prosecutors. At the last budget hearing, the AG told lawmakers that the prosecution division is, quote, comfortable. That was a lie. Yeah, pretty strong language. The attorney at the last budget hearing, the AG told lawmakers that the prosecution division is comfortable. That was a lie. Our oversight attorney is Therese Terlahi. I think she means oversight senator is Therese Terlahi. She is never here and doesn't know we badly need to be paid. We have been operating at limited capacity for so long, years now. This is why crime is deteriorated. It's not just a recent thing. And then we saw the figure 25 in the paper here not too long ago. We were never at 25. For the last 7 years, we've been fluctuating at 10 to 15 at the most. If the public wonders why nobody is applying and everybody is leaving, the answer is because the pay is not competitive. The only reason for bringing this up is to let the public know why. Because at the very least, if crime isn't going to stop, the people of Guam deserve to know why. It's unsafe and helpless, even though prosecutors have the job to fight crime. They feel unsafe and helpless. They can only do so much with so very little. All the prosecutors are suffering, and everyone is trying to leave. it's going to get ugly soon if something doesn't happen. Repeating for emphasis. All prosecutors are suffering and everyone is trying to leave. It's going to get ugly soon if something doesn't happen. This morning on Ray's show, Troy did his usual cameo. And one of the things that he left with Ray, without elaborating, something's going on at the Attorney General's office, prosecution division, a walkout. So maybe that would be pretty ugly, wouldn't it? If all of the prosecutors said, take this job and shove it. I ain't working here no more.
The Attorney General has a different ticking to be worried about.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, so not very good news for somebody who wants to be reelected Attorney General. And
maybe he can run for Vice President of the United States.
Maybe he could. Or if Doug Moylan, if St. Nicholas runs for governor and Doug Moylan doesn't run for Washington rep, then Levin could run for Washington rep. Just a really sad situation. And you know, the job of a prosecutor is to prosecute the guilty and protect the innocent. And you know, if you're shorthanded, if you're just putting fires out all the time instead of really concentrating on what needs to be done, you really can't do either. And I think that there is an awful lot of discontent in the public about the way things are going. And my analysis is that the public pays more attention to crime than anything else the Attorney General does. Not so interested in government claims or even the Northern Wastewater Treatment Plant or class actions dealing with opioids, etc. So it looks like the Attorney General may have let a situation in his office get out of control. And if that's the case, it's going to be a whole real difficult job to put it back together. Now, I know another guy who wants to be Attorney General, and if you were to ask a man on the street, is this guy tough on crime? The answer would be, you better Hong Kong believe it. I'm talking about Doug Moylan. So, as I've used the phrase in the past, vid sap, a word to the wise is sufficient. Okay. Let's head for Churchill Downs. As you were, let's go to Wrigley Field, and then we'll go to Churchill Downs.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point. Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Attention tailgaters. It's time for you to get a new tail to gate on. It's a fact. They got a 2021 model clearance going on all kinds of your favorite Nissan models, the Rogue Sport, Kicks, Murano, Titan, and they've all got great FM radios so that you can pick up tall tales in the afternoon. 0% APR or your first 3 payments are on Nissan. Zero down magic tailgaters. Learn more by visiting NissanGuam.com.
Okay, so here we are, Wrigley Field in Chicago, world's most beautiful ballpark, and inhabited by probably the world's worst baseball team, the Chicago Cubs. Yeah, you know, back in the day, once again, when I was a youngster, believe it or not, I was once, there were a lot of people in my hometown, which is about 75 miles from Wrigley Field, that were Cub fans. And you had to be you had to have a really strong character to be a Cub fan. There weren't very many rewards to being a Cub fan. In 1953, the Milwaukee Braves moved from Boston to Milwaukee. And an awful lot of people, probably 95% of the people that had been Cub fans became Braves fans. But there were still the 5% that stuck with the Cubs. And those people, you know, extremely strong-willed people to stick with the Cubs. If the Cubs didn't lose by too much, they'd have victory parties. Hey, the Cubs only lost by 3 runs. What do you think of that? Anyhow, here we are at Wrigley Field. And the item on the card now is Candid versus the Post and the PDN. And this goes to this deals with what has been labeled the helicopter trial. There has been a federal prosecution against a company called Hanson Helicopters. It's been going on for years. And it's about to go to trial. In fact, jury selection has already begun. And it's really hard to get your arms around this whole story, but one of the defendants is named Crow, and he's represented by David Lujan. The U.S. Attorney's Office here brought in a hired gun from out of town named Marie Miller, who works for the Federal Aviation Agency to prosecute this case. And David Lujan has accused Marie Miller of being a dirty prosecutor and trying to entrap him into doing something that amounts to misconduct. Now, in addition to what's going on there, which is a pretty good story, we have the story of Boom Montanonia, also known as John Montanonia, a former police officer who has been indicted for jury tampering and trafficking in meth. His case began a couple years ago, but it has gone nowhere for the last for at least the last couple years, because of various papers filed with the district court under seal. So we find out now that Boom Montanonia is a government informant and has, as they say on Law and Order, worn a wire when he was talking with some criminal types, including government officials and drug dealers. So Boom gets tied into this because Marie Miller is accusing David Lujan of jury tampering because of a gift that he allegedly gave to Telefofo Elementary, a school where Boom's wife was principal until 2013. And that's kind of where we picked this up. So I've got 2 articles by Candid that are very well done. The Post and the Daily News, not so much. The Daily News is kind of like, well, there's a criminal trial at the district court. The judge's name is Francis Gatewood. This is a developing story. Troy and Candid really lays it out. And it's all credible because it's all stuff that he's gotten from documents filed with the court. It's not a tall tale. That's my job. So picking up with with a juror during voir dire said she couldn't be impartial in the case. That she because her brother is Dave Lujan's brother is a close friend of her sister-in-law. And, you know, I just found out recently that he, meaning David Lujan, donates to our school And I just thought that was pretty cool. So she's saying she knows David Lujan. It's going to be hard for her to rule against him, to find against him. It was that statement from the potential juror coupled with what Mr. Lujan calls a personal animus against him that caused Ms. Miller to summon the powers of the federal government against him. The following day, 2 FBI agents approached the potential juror's co-worker, according to an affidavit filed in federal court. The co-worker corroborated the potential juror's testimony before the court and also told federal investigators that the donation of the school supplies was made from the surplus from a building Mr. Lujan owned and was about to demolish, and that Mr. Lujan wasn't even aware of the donation. So Miller is trying to say that he curried favor with the folks down at Telefofo because of that potential juror. I made it very clear that Attorney Lujan has no idea about the supplies brought from Corn Building before demolition and used the school for the children. The Corn Building belonged to David Lujan, and I labeled it as a donation by him to give him credit, although he was not aware. I told the female FBI agent that Attorney Lujan had no idea that I said the supplies to be discarded was donated by him. Quote, the government appears to be involving itself extrajudicially in the jury selection process, Lujan told the court during arguments Sunday. When the court sits on a Sunday, that's kind of important. And prior to his motion to have Ms. Miller and her prosecution team dismissed from the case, Ms. Miller said the reason the U.S. Attorney's Office made the decision to investigate the juror and the school stemmed from a 2019 accusation by then Assistant U.S. Attorney Fred Black that defense attorneys in the Martinez-Mosier federal trial may have been aware of John Boom Montanonia's tampering of the jury, for which he was later indicted. Now, that's a pretty heavy rap. Reason to investigate the juror was a 2019 accusation by Fred Black that defense counsel in the Martinez-Mosier federal trial may have been aware of Boom's tampering with the jury. Martinez-Mosier, you recall, was a drug trial. 2 trials on Guam, both resulted in mistrials. Then the case was tried the 3rd time in Los Angeles, and my recollection is that Martinez and Mosier pled when it went to Los Angeles. So I don't know who did what to whom, and I have a really difficult time believing that David Lujan would have anything to do with jury tampering whatsoever. He is so good at what he does. He can win fair and square. Why would he want to screw around with jury tampering? But the simple arithmetic is this. In a criminal trial, if you want to have a not guilty verdict for your trial, for your client, and you're a crook, you got to go out and bribe 12 jurors to get a non-guilty verdict. But for a mistrial, it only takes 1. That's it. Because in a criminal jury trial, there has to be a unanimous verdict. And if the jury keeps coming back, Your Honor, we cannot reach a verdict, the judge will give what's known as the dynamite charge, give them one more chance. If they don't reach a verdict, the judge declares a mistrial, and then the prosecution has to determine whether they want to try it again. So this is really heavy-duty stuff. So we go on to the next paragraph here. I was accused, but guess what? Mr. Lujan argued in court, the government took it back. Indeed, Mr. Black exonerated defense attorneys in the case, telling the court weeks after making the accusation that there was no reason to believe any of the attorneys were aware of Montanonia's crimes. Ms. Miller, who is representing the U.S. Attorney's Office and is assisted by U.S. Attorney Assistant U.S. Attorney Stephen Leon Guerrero, should have known these facts, Lujan said. And so I resent Ms. Miller coming here and making such an accusation without checking at least with Mr. Black, Lujan said. The government has shown it's a dirty prosecutor who goes, sends out people to investigate, jurors or people who have been brought in for jury selection. All they're trying to do is intimidate people and scare people from sitting here so they can select people they want. Rule number 1 for prosecutors: don't screw around with David Lujan. In a hearing in the judge's chambers following the FBI interview at the Telefofo school, Ms. Miller told the court that the federal government discovered from an interview with the school principal that Mr. Lujan made no such donation to the school. She referred to the principal as the person whose husband worked for Mr. Lujan, principal at Telefofo. There are several problems with that assertion. The first being that the principal of Telefofo Elementary School is a man, Erwin Manabusin. God, are we back to whispering in ears again? Can you say that in a news story now? Can you say that Erwin Manabusin is a man?
Excuse me, it's ma'am. It is ma'am.
Wow, these political correctness rules are so hard to remember, Jose. Yeah, the principal of Telefofo Elementary School is a man, Erwin Manabusin, who does not have a husband. You got to say that now, right? It used to be just enough. He's a man, right? Who does not have a husband who ever worked for Mr. Lujan. The school did have a principal whose husband once worked for Mr. Lujan. Her name is Evelyn Montanonia, wife of Boom Montanonia, and she has not been school principal since 2013. Wow, Marie Miller. Mr. Lujan then challenged Miss Miller's testimony before the judge, accusing the prosecutor of lying to the court. Knowing that Montanonia is a cooperating agent for the government whose case remains under seal while he is cooperating against yet-to-be-named targets of the federal government. Now, Miller either knew it or should have known that. The government's conduct has reached yet another level of outrageousness. What's he got against the Rageouses? Yeah, their conduct is just outrageous. Out Santos, out Cruz, out Martinez. Yeah, Mr. Lujan wrote in his motion seeking, among other things, an evidentiary hearing to determine the misconduct on the part of the prosecution's team of lawyers, including Ms. Miller. I guess what David's trying to tell us here is it's Miller time. The government did not inform the court that their source was married to a cooperating witness. Mr. Lujan's motion states, the result of the government's conduct is that Crow is getting squeezed in the middle. The issue the government has injected into these proceedings must be fully resolved before trial. If the government is dirty, and Lujan has presented not a small amount of evidence which strongly suggests it is, the prosecution team must go. Now, this is Troy's analysis. Even though Lujan has been able to bring forward evidence favorable to his position, there are many issues which remain outstanding and are not fully resolved. Among Lujan's weekend filings was a video played in open court that Mr. Lujan alleges was an attempt and conspiracy led by Miss Miller to entrap Lujan. The video was sent to Lujan's client, Crow, on February 19 by one of the prosecution's witnesses, Jose Eduardo Marino Gonçalves, Mr. Marino, on Spain. I guess he's from Spain. Mr. Marino was a Hanson pilot. His deposition was taken in 2020 and was supposed to suffice as testimony in his case because he's in Spain. The February 19 video from Marino to Crow is about 3 minutes long and shows Marino saying he lied about the defendants, about Crow and the two co-defendants, because the government threatened him and that he said whatever he believed the government wanted him to say in order to avoid going to jail. He also said he wanted to come to Guam to tell the truth in open court and to tell the judge and the jury exactly what the government did. He provided his phone number in the video and said for Crow's attorney, Mr. Lujan, to call Marino to arrange for the testimony. Now, this is the government's witness. Not a very smooth move. On February 25, Mr. Marino emailed Ms. Miller. Among his statements, he said, Marie Miller, please don't tell them I'm going with you and let them think I'm with them, and I'll get you more proof. A double agent. Boy, I hope our Carl is listening. He's the only guy at Island that can put all these pieces together. Mr. Lujan alleges this is proof Marino and Miller conspired to entrap Lujan into calling Marino at his request and thereby establishing a charge from Miller that Lujan was witness tampering or trying to intimidate a government witness. Wow. The government's misconduct clearly demonstrates a degree of personal animus against defense counsel that directly contradicts a prosecutor's ethical obligation to seek justice. Now, once again, an explanation. Defense counsel, almost anything is fair game for defense counsel. There's even a special provision in the rules of ethics for lawyers that say that some of the rules don't apply to criminal defense. Criminal defense attorney's job is to make the government prove its case. Now, he can't suborn perjury and things like that, but a criminal defense attorney has broad latitude. Prosecutor doesn't. If a prosecutor finds out midway through a trial that the defendant is actually innocent, even if he thinks he can win, you got to call a halt to it and say, wait a minute, hold on, let's dismiss this. A very strong obligation on the part of prosecutors. So it's not just a game of winner take all for the prosecution. So David Lujan says the personal animus against defense counsel that directly contradicts a prosecutor's ethical obligation to seek justice. The motion to disqualify the prosecutor states, here the prosecutors have manifested an unabated personal interest in impugning the integrity of Crow's counsel, David Lujan. Particularly disturbing is the fact that government counsel, and particularly FAA counsel Marie Miller, has consistently engaged in character assassination against Lujan that has injected the poison of government vindictiveness into the government's entire handling of this case. As such, the prosecutors have a conflict for which at this stage in litigation mandates the remedy of disqualification. Judge Tydinkle Gatewood hinted she would be ruling in the government's favor, but has taken the matter under advisement. In the meantime, and admonishing both sides of the courtroom to work together on customary matters like the sharing of information. She ordered the prosecution to provide certain evidence to defendants by 4 p.m. Tuesday. Okay, pretty heavy-duty stuff. Time for me to head for Churchill Downs. And when I get out of Churchill Downs, I'm going to be talking with Ron McNinch.
Always here to help you. This island is our home. Through the years, we've been a friend to the neighbors we have known. Now we're banking on the future. More services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
We're already Pika's best radio station, but we're always looking for ways to be even better. Announcing the point on Alexa. In addition to our FM and HD radio feeds, our incredible app, informative website, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live, you can now tell Alexa to stream The Point. And your smart speaker will start playing whatever we're saying. News and views 24/7 with your 4-word command. Alexa, stream The Point.
All right, here we are, Churchill Downs in Louisville. We got about 9 more minutes to go, 2 furlongs, and I'll be crossing the finish line on a Thursday. Not looking forward to tomorrow at all. It's our least favorite day of the week, Friday. It's going to be tough. 70 hours straight with no tall tales and no tailgaters. Jose and I suffer through it every weekend. We somehow make it, and we're back on Mondays at 1600, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, ready to go at it again. So I've got Ron McNinch on the line. I want to see how the Tall Tales jury has voted so far. We've got Peter Santos, who echoes my comment. It's Miller time. And Colin Clark. Hanson Helicopters, guilty. Well, that may very well be the case. However, David Lujan's matter here has to be determined before we get to the guilt or innocence of his clients. But you may very well be right, because I think Colin pointed out before that the FAA inspector, the fixer, has already pled guilty, which makes it look kind of bad for Hanson. Okay, then we've got Melvin Santos says connections. And then Pete Santos comes back and says outrageous. I guess that's the one that's out. Outrageous, right? And then Peter comes back again. It's David's home field advantage. You better bring it on, or else you're going to get sent home. And then Colin Clark, David Lujan's good at letting criminals get away, especially guilty ones. Well, I gotta get in there. You know, a defense attorney is to seek a non-guilty verdict for his client, a plea bargain or whatever, and it's tough, but it's the ethical obligation of a criminal defense attorney to give his client the best criminal defense he possibly can. Another way of expressing it is it's the defense attorney's job to make the government prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, if you were to stop and ask what is the most essential element in our criminal justice system, the answer is defense, because you can't find anybody guilty of anything unless that person is represented by counsel. So it's a tough gig, but I take my hat off to defense counsel. They're very important, and if what we have seen here with Marie Miller, if this all comes to pass, I'm really glad that we have vigorous advocacy on the part of defense counsel, because I wouldn't want to be in that situation, and I wouldn't want anybody else to be in that situation. Okay, let's check and see what Ron wants to say here in the home stretch.
Hey, half a day, Senator, half a day, Guam. You know, I agree with you. Mr. Lujan's just an excellent attorney, and he is a true advocate and representative of his clients, and that's his job, and you know, the standard for lawyers is they have to advocate for their clients in a zealous way, and that's an even higher standard. That is, they have to, you know, with absolute, you know, zeal, go after these kinds of things. But I did want to mention a couple of other points. I agree with you also. Troy's doing wonderful journalism. I'm really pleased to see the neat stories coming out of Candid, and the depth of the reporting, and also just the I mean, I think that's good for everybody, and I think that it's he's setting a very good standard for the rest of media here. But there is one other little thing I was going to mention, and that is so I think that the big thing that I've always wondered about is when people come in from off island, sometimes, I don't want to say ugly American, and ugly American meaning that when the Americans
that's my job, Ron. But go on.
Well, you know what I mean.
I do.
mean, it's just sometimes I would call them carpetbaggers where I'm from. You know, where, you know, people come to a community and they act like they know it all or can do anything regardless. And I see that sometimes here, and it's unfortunate. That is that people aren't. You know, you've lived here for many years. You know all of the rocks in the river, and you know our community very well. But sometimes other people come here and they're not sensitive to the point that we follow laws just like everybody else, and they can't get by with, you know, shoddy legal work. And so it's one of those kinds of things. That was kind of what I was thinking of, and that is, you know, that sometimes people from the outside don't, and I'm from the South, and you'd see people from the North act like this all the time too. So it's not, you know, specific to Guam. But it's just the carpetbagger effect is kind of what I would think of. But that's just some of my comments. Sir.
Did you want to talk about scalawags too, Ron?
Yeah, you know, I think scalawag's a great term. You know, especially when people act like, you know, they're above any rule or any kind of regulation. And you know, I just see it sometimes, and I see it in the South also. All the time. People would come in and think like they own the place and act rudely all the time. In this case, sometimes I see, particularly off-island attorneys, and I've seen this several times over the years, act this in this sort of arrogant way where they just don't realize how insulting they're being to the legal community here and to the courts here sometimes.
I'm probably the only lawyer that you know that isn't arrogant, that is actually humble and is really proud of his humility, Ron.
Well, you've always been willing to have a good debate and discussion, and I think that's very admirable. You know, not all lawyers that I know can do that as well as you do, and I think you take that role seriously, and I think that we all appreciate it.
Okay, Ron, good talking to you. And one bit of advice. Let's go, Brandon.
Yeah, Brandon, I'll tell you. That's right. I hope he goes.
Is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam. 93.3 FM, and 104.3 HD3.
The highest level talks yet. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and his Ukrainian counterpart Dmytro Kuleba meet in Turkey today. Kuleba saying his expectations are limited, but there are slight signs of movement. Among them, the possibility that Ukraine would agree not to seek NATO membership in exchange for an end to the hostilities. The United Nations joining those talks over nuclear concerns.
The director of the IAEA will join them to discuss nuclear safety. This comes as Russian forces occupy the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, which has had a power outage, which concerns Ukrainian officials. But the IAEA cautions there's no need for immediate alarm, and there has been no release of radiation.
Fox's Jennifer Griffin, the scene of a reactor explosion in 1986. The Chernobyl plant contains nuclear fuel and is in the midst of a decommissioning process. A Russian airstrike damaging a children's hospital and maternity ward in the besieged city of Mariupol on Wednesday.
Local officials saying at least 17 reported wounded, including children and expectant mothers. It's one of the most heartbreaking incidents yet for a city that has been under constant Russian bombardment for days. Residents cut off from power, water, and food.
Fox's Trey Yingst in Kiev. The House has approved a $1.5 trillion spending plan to fend the federal government through the rest of the fiscal year. It also includes nearly $14 billion in military and humanitarian aid for Ukraine. The Senate is expected to take up that bill on Friday. The government's report on consumer prices is due out later this morning, expected to show another 40-year high for inflation last month. The White House trying to brand record high gas prices as the Putin price hike, but House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy counters.
The upward trajectory in gas prices started the very day President Biden took office.
The president canceled the Keystone Oil pipeline on his first